Hey everybody, thank you so much for coming out and appreciate everybody's flexibility with the storm yesterday. I know this was been kind of thrown together, changing the date around and everything, so I appreciate everybody's flexibility. And I know I'm without power, so I'm sure some of you very well could be without power as well. So thanks for coming out, and a big thanks to Brian for being so flexible, changing the date last minute and coming down here. This is a little bit of a drive for Brian, so a big thank you to Brian for coming down here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I met Brian years ago through a mutual friend named Doug, and it's been really exciting. When I opened the store 9 years ago, the day I opened, Doug brought me a couple signed pictures from Brian running the Beijing Olympics back in 2008, and it's always been on sort of my running store bucket list to have you come down here. Quite honestly, it's really cool, and I brag quite frequently that like, oh yeah, I'm BFFs with Brian Sell.
That's cool.
I haven't seen you in many moons, but it's been something I've been really excited to have you. So I really appreciate you making the trip down, and I know. Like a lot of my staff members, a lot of people I talk to that are big running guys, like this is a really cool moment to have somebody who's been to the top of the mountain, and really would love to get some insight on like how you got there. So I certainly appreciate your time coming down.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate being here. That's the great thing about the running community. You know, it's not every day I guess you get to hang out and talk to Michael Jordan or Joe Montana, but runners there's a lot of good ones locally, and we're always happy. Most of us are always happy to hang out with the community anytime.
Well, it's cool. We have a local guy here in town who I always call our Bruce Denton. His name is Steve Cartalia, and so we do. I reference Steve Cartalia a lot because he was sort of our local Bruce Denton. And then like on the bigger scale, for those who know Once a Runner, you're like the real Bruce Denton.
Well, he had a gold, but yeah.
Yeah. But before we get too far into that, I wanted to kind of just sort of start back with where you were. So Brian is from Pennsylvania, and if you don't mind giving us a little bit of information about sort of how you got into running, because I know you didn't necessarily start as like a runner, like some of the younger kids here that started at like a young age. You didn't really get into running until a little bit later in life.
Sure, yeah. I grew up in small Bedford County, Pennsylvania, so just over the Maryland border. We share a border with Maryland there, and I grew up wrestling and playing football because that's where the good-looking cheerleaders were, and didn't really give running a second thought. But noticed in wrestling my 7th, 8th grade year, I was really gassing out in the third period, really struggling to stick with my opponent and so forth. And one of my buddies on the wrestling team convinced me to go out for the track team, and I went out my sophomore year and started in the mile. I thought about pole vault, saw a pole break in practice, decided to go a different direction from that. But I got into the mile, and I wasn't great. I mean, I was really lucky that the area I was in wasn't really competitive. I did win the district in my sophomore year, and winning your district in PA qualifies you for the state meet, but I think I beat like a goat and a chicken in the district meet, so it wasn't quite as competitive as I'm sure it is around here, and definitely not where I'm from in Lancaster County. So.
Yeah, so your very first year of running, you did have some success though. You made it to the district championships.
Yep.
When you were a sophomore runner, just getting into it. Did you sort of have an inkling of like, this is my niche thing, like this could be my thing, or you were bouncing around between baseball, wrestling, and football? Were you still thinking about trying other things? Did that sort of open your eyes that this is a sport I really have some potential in?
Yeah, no, I was still focused on all three all the way through high school. My senior year, I won the district title in wrestling as well. So it was very similar to running. Running in my area wasn't exactly the sport that guys wanted to do in the 90s, but. Yeah, I definitely had success in a couple different ones. And when I graduated, I went to Messiah College in Harrisburg, and it would completely pick the college based on the quality of their pizza in the cafeteria. I had no intention of running or anything like that. And while I was at Messiah, I sat behind the captain of the cross country team, and he was like the big man on campus. He knew everybody. He had this all these friends on campus and so forth. And I said, "Hey, Steve, what's your mile PR?" And he's like 4:38, and I had run a 4:28 in high school, and so we just started talking, and he convinced me to come out, and so I didn't even go out didn't even run a cross country race till I was in college, and didn't run track my first year at Messiah just because I didn't think I was good enough to run at that level. So.
It just blows my mind that you didn't run a cross country race until you were in college, just because
Yeah.
you went on and competed at such a high level, and even in the world's cross country later
Yeah.
on. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
we didn't have a team at Northern Bedford where I went, so it was football or nothing. So, yeah.
well, and even when you went and transferred, you didn't have a physical track at your college.
No.
So I don't mean to jump ahead of the story, but so you were at Messiah for a year, and then
Yep.
you transferred to St. Francis.
Yeah. Started training hard at Messiah even before when I decided to go out for the team all summer and into the spring, I trained a lot. I would just go out with my CD Sony Walkman and headphones, and run around in circles. I'd go down. Messiah had like an indoor track. It was like a rectangle more or less, and I'd just go down there and like race people. See how many times I could catch people over the course of a half hour or so. I felt like I was training for the Boston Marathon, but I had some success right away at Messiah. But again, I think it was more a function of the level of competition in D3. Had enough success at Messiah that St. Francis coach Kevin Donner contacted me and said, "Hey, why don't you come out and check it out? We're interested in having you take a look at campus." And visited there, and that college was closer to where I grew up, and it was cheaper, and I got a little bit of a scholarship out of the deal, so it just made sense to transfer. And yeah, you're right. St. Francis did not have a track when Doug and I were there. So they have recently installed. Well, it's probably been 10 years ago now. But when we were training, we ran on a hill right next to campus, just a road. So that was our track.
So I actually reference that pretty frequently with talking to younger people that are getting into running, and sort of like one of the things that I love about running is just sort of the simplicity of it and the beauty of it. Of like, you went on to the Olympics and your college didn't have a track, and racing against you in college, you guys kicked our butts on the regular. Like your whole squad was really good, and we look back and we were D1 and we had all this, we had a nice track and nice facilities, but like you guys, we just looked at you guys as you just worked for everything so hard. And did you guys feel like you had almost, I don't say a chip on the shoulder, but sort of like underrespected and underappreciated?
Yeah, exactly. That chip on the shoulder is exactly what it was. We were all at St. Francis. We were always considered ourselves like B and C level guys. We weren't good enough to get looks from Penn State or Stanford or the big schools. And we raced Bucknell. That was like a huge rival for us. And those guys were all like, they had quite a few PA state champs on their team at that time. So we definitely had a chip on our shoulder, and it definitely made us, raise our game and practices and so forth. It's definitely a motivating factor. But that's the thing I love about running. It's not so much where you start. It's all about how much work you're willing to put into it and dedicate to it. And yeah.
So you did the mile was your primary distance in high school. Obviously, you raced the 2 mile as well.
Yeah.
But in college, your senior year, you won the steeplechase, the 5K, and the 10K in the same conference championship.
Yeah, St. Francis.
Could you tell that the longer it went, the better you get, or were you still
Yeah.
sort of feeling it out there for your best distance?
Definitely, yeah. I was really only a miler in high school because I had a teammate that was better than me. I wasn't the top guy on my high school team, so he was better in the 2 mile than I was, and we were very neck and neck in the mile. So a lot of times I think he kind of backed off the gas and let me take a few of them. But I never really dove into the longer distances or trained for those in high school. But as I matriculated through college, I saw that the longer the race, the better. I didn't have a whole lot of innate speed, that's for sure.
So reading sort of your bio stuff, it sounds like there was a race just after college that sort of changed your trajectory at the Raleigh Relays.
The Stanford.
Excuse
Invite,
me. Yeah. So tell me about that race and what sort of clicked at that race, and was that sort of the race that gave you the inkling of like, I haven't even hit my close to potential yet?
Yeah, definitely. I went into Stanford Invite with a 30:04 10K PR. I think that was like the Bucknell night meet or something like that. And just looking down that list of names and times, it was completely intimidating. And I went out there with my assistant coach, and we went out to lunch together, had some really good conversations about pace and so forth, and just went into that race. And if you ever get a chance to run at Stanford, it's magical. It's an amazing track. It's a great meet. It's packed house. And just kind of caught lightning in a bottle and ran 28:58 there. And tripped at about 200 meters to go. We got tied up with another guy and went down and got back up and still hit the auto NCAA qualifier there. And that was a real kind of a race that put me over the top. It also qualified me for the Hansons program.
So did you qualify for the trials in the 10K at that race as well? Because I know you also had a 10K qualifier for the trials.
No, I qualified for the 10K while I was at Hansons.
Okay.
Yeah, so I qualified, in '04 I qualified for both the 10K and the marathon for the Olympic trials. So, yeah.
So you graduated from St. Francis, and then so how did you get to the Hanson Brothers program?
Well, I mean, I graduated and I really didn't feel like getting a real job right out of college, you know, and I kind of looked around. There was a team out in California in the Stanford area, Palo Alto, the Nike farm team that was really, you know, coming up, and really a good-looking team. And then the Hansons were kind of my second choice, and visited California, really enjoyed it. They had kind of an infrastructure set up, but not really. They said they were, you know, kind of said that you'll have a job when you come out here, you have a place to live, and that stuff kind of fell away the more I got to communicating with the coaches and so forth. So Hansons had a nice setup. They had 4 running stores in the Detroit area. They paid us, you know, $8-10 an hour to work the stores, put us up in one of their houses that they bought for free. So it was kind of like a running frat house, a bunch of guys, you know, living together. And we worked at the stores to pay for groceries, to, you know, fuel our bodies so we could train. And yeah, it was a great deal. It was more of a safety net, I guess. And so I chose to move to Detroit. And yeah, I was actually on my way out to Detroit, my truck packed with all my stuff when September 11th happened. So I was like Cleveland when everything was going down around Shanksville, PA and stuff like that. So yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday.
It always amazes me too. Is you kind of put your life on hold for a while there.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like most, you know, professional athletes, people at the Ravens and such, who graduate from college and then some big sport pays them a bunch of money and relocates and such.
Mm-hmm.
You were doing this all on your own and sort of just flying by the seat of your pants. You got your diploma and you said, I'm driving out here. I'm going to try to just see what happens here. Did you give yourself like, I'm going to give myself a year or 2 years to see where this goes, or were you just going to take each day as it comes?
It was a year at a time. Yeah, I mean, you had to sign a year contract, so you were locked in for a year, and I was like, yeah, I'll give this a shot. And yeah, I started chopping time off my 10K, and the longer the road races and so forth, you know, I kept PRing in those, and so, you know, 1 year turned into 2, turned into 10. But you know, that's the great thing about running. I mean, it's not like a job or a complete team sport. I mean, you have a lot more control over your success. You know, barring any injuries, if you put the time in, you know, you're gonna see the results, and that's really what I love about it. I mean, whether you're a 20-minute miler or a sub 5-minute miler, I mean, you can improve, you can get better, and it's a pretty good feeling.
Well, that's what, you know, one of the things we were speaking to some of the coaches about tonight is, you know, that impressed me a lot was, you know, you ran a 4:28 in the mile and like 10:06 in the 2 mile, but then you fast forward and you're averaging sub 5 minutes mile for a marathon. You know, just sort of that like grind, work, just incremental in growth as you go through it, and you just keep putting money in that bank until you're able to kind of make that giant withdrawal on race day. And it's such a patient growth period, years of building you did to get to that point, and it's just, you have to just totally commit yourself and just to like, you know, sort of know you from afar, and to like hear through Doug and other friends of the type of stuff you're doing. Like, you know, we were kind of joking about once a runner and such, but like you kind of got to live that experience. Do you do you now kind of sit back and appreciate like what a cool experience that was?
Absolutely, yeah. I got to see tons of different places in the world. I mean, Portugal and Finland and Australia and all over the place, and you know, because of running. So yeah, it's a great feeling. And there were a lot of ups and downs. I mean, I know it's easy to step back and say you went from here to there, but it was more like this. You know, there were a lot of ups and downs. There's some injury issues, you know, and just races that didn't go perfectly or to plan, and you know, a lot of just assessing, you know, sitting down and assessing what went wrong, what I could do better, and kind of coming back stronger the next time. So yeah, it certainly wasn't all roses.
I remember, you know, you graduated and like kind of following what you were doing, and then you came in 4th at the Boston Marathon, like, which is still it's preposterous, you know, you were to run that well at that big of a stage. I think that's, I was talking to Doug after your race and be like, oh my God, our friend is like, this is pretty darn special here. Can you talk us about Boston a little bit?
Oh yeah, that's a great race. I mean, if you're training for a marathon, Boston should be, you know, at the top of your list. And I mean, they treated us so well, and the history of that race is just phenomenal. You know, knowing the guys that were there before, the Dick Beardsley and Alberto Salazar, and I mean all those guys that had run it before, and just over 100 years of that race going on. It was great, and it was definitely triple highlighted on my calendar. You know, we usually at Hansons we would start a marathon build up about 3 months out. So, you know, we had a calendar with, you know, workouts that were specifically for the Boston, to hit the pace, to dial that pace in, and they were highlighted on our schedules and so forth. So it was a long preparation that went really well for me.
So at that time, that was your PR. So you ran 210 at Boston, and that was your PR at the time. Did you have a goal time or a place, or what was sort of the goal for that day?
Just 5-minute pace, and at halfway, I mean, I was right on pace at halfway, and as you know, Boston's kind of downhill the first half and then uphill the second. I think I was in about 28th place or so at halfway, so there was a lot of doubt, like what the heck, why didn't I go out faster, but then you start seeing one guy and two guys coming back to you and just climbing that ladder. So it was a good lesson in having a plan going into a marathon and then sticking to it in the moment. I mean, it's super easy, especially in a big race like that, to go out way too fast, and cook your goose before you're even at mile 13. So it was a great lesson there in pacing as well. So.
Was that intimidating being in like the elite village for that race? Because I'm sure you're looking around at obviously you're Brian Sell, but you're looking at like the biggest of and all the TV, like that race was probably at the time the biggest race you'd been on.
Yeah, and Robert Cherry was there, who set the course record that year, and I mean he was I think he was a world champion at the time and so forth. So yeah, there's some big guns in the room, but I mean I'm just really thankful because the masses, they have to kind of do their own thing and find their own toilets and so forth. So we were treated very well. So yeah, I'm just very thankful for that experience.
And then you came back a few months later at Chicago and basically did almost the same thing again. You came through as one of the top Americans, be top American at Chicago.
Yeah. And I was shooting for a sub 210 there. Chicago's flatter. It's more of a race course. There was a bit of a wind out of the north, and the last 3 miles or so into the finish line are a killer headwind that day. So things didn't go quite to plan. Brooks had a really nice sub 210 bonus that I was really going for. So it wasn't a perfect race, but you can't argue with a PR, or be angry about a PR. So, and again, just another great experience. I mean, 40-some thousand people in the race, and to come in sixth there was a good one. Yeah.
So at that point, I'm assuming you were pretty focused on the trials at that point. So this was 06. So at this point, that was sort of the target zone, or do you have something else that you were shooting for between that?
Before that, I mean, I ran the trials in 04 and went in there with just barely got the A standard. It was like 2:19:59, and that was at Chicago the year before. Had no intentions of placing or making the Olympic team in 04. That was in Birmingham, Alabama. And it was a cold and windy day. The goal was to run like 5:06 pace or so. And we had 3 guys on the Hansons team that were about that fitness level. And we set off, the first mile was 5:20, second mile was 5:27, and I took off on my own. I said, we have to stick to pace. This is the plan. None of my guys went with me. So I ended up leading the 04 trials through about 22.5 miles and was so excited. I mean, I had a nice crew of family and friends down there, and totally missed drinking any Gatorade bottles, anything like that. Totally, ignored them and hit the proverbial wall at about 22.5. Don't remember any of the last 2 miles or so. I remember the, kind of tunnel vision coming in on me, and ended up 11th or 12th in the trials. But that moment, at first it was like, oh man, I was so close. If I just would have run smarter, I could have made the Olympic team. But kind of hitting the reset button and saying, I was that close, and so that really lit the fire for the next 4 years to train hard. So Boston and Chicago were definitely steps toward that overall goal, making the team, and that was kind of the thing that ignited the fire for the next 4 years. So.
Well, now, I mean, I'm sure it was also somewhat daunting to just drop your group of guys and say, like, I have to go, and putting yourself out there. Right, I mean, that in alone takes a lot of chutzpah.
In the field with, Meb, Keflezgy, and Alan Culpepper, these guys are like 27, 10K guys, and I'm coming in with a minute slower, so I knew I wasn't going to outkick them, so I
you had to make a move.
Yeah, make the race honest, yeah.
So I actually was looking at a wedding venue on the trials for 08 when I was up in New York, and our friend Doug called me to give me all the updates. Mm-hmm. Can you talk us about the trials, and it was been 07 getting ready for the 08 Olympics for the marathon and everything that kind of unfolded that day?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it was basically a 2 mile jog when we started on the Today Show, like right outside of the Today Show. So
up in Central Park
or whatever it is. Yeah, we ran into Central Park, so it was about 2 miles into Central Park, and then we did, I forget, four loops or so, little variations of the Central Park loop, which was really rolling, and it was a very challenging course. And I mean, I trained on a hilly course the 3 months leading up to it. I had my pace dialed in where I could tell the difference between a 5 flat and a 5:05 going, up a 3% grade or down a 3% grade. I really felt like I was dialed in. And, it was kind of like Boston a year or so before, where the field went out pretty hard. I led through about 2 or 3 miles because it was similar to the trials in '04 where they went out at 5:20, kind of feeling each other out. And I went up front and led through 4 or 5 miles, and then the real horses in the race kind of took over and took off and dropped me hard. So, you had Khalid Kanuchi, who was the world record holder at the time, Ryan Hall, who had run, far under sub 210 coming in, Ritzenhein, who was a Foot Locker champ, national champ, you name it. He had run, 210 or so in the marathon coming into that. Meb, who was an Olympic silver medalist.
Was Galen in that one, or was
he
that?
He wasn't.
Okay.
No, he was. I don't know if he's still in college or not, but yeah, a little too old for Galen, and I never raced him. But yeah, it was. A lot of people said it was the best marathon field ever assembled, and yeah. So through 18, well, not 18, maybe 14 or 15 miles, I was sitting in probably 8th or 9th place, and. Similar situation to Boston. I saw my miles; they were right on where we needed to be. My coaches are right there giving me the information and so forth, and just slowly started picking my way up through the field. And about 18, 19 miles, I saw Dan Brown, who was sitting in 3rd place, and passed him. And I remember that very clearly because I was hurting, I was gritting my teeth and struggling like everybody else. And when I went by Dan, I tried to straighten up as much as I could. Good job, Dan. Try to make him think that I wasn't
Finish
hurting
strong.
at all. Yeah, and it's funny. There's a video of the live feed. You can see it. You can see me coming up, and it looks like I'm just pulling a plow. And then when I go by him, I look smooth as butter. And
have to.
When I get about 400 meters clear, then I go back to gritting it out. So, but yeah, that's a great memory. And I ended up finishing strong and making the team. So.
That's like every runner's dream, right?
Yeah.
Making the Olympic team, wrapping yourself in the flag, and all that good stuff. I have a picture of you here wrapping in the American flag after that. I just, as somebody who's, knew you from afar, like, it was just such a cool moment for like seeing somebody who didn't go to Stanford and, just was like a guy who gritted through it. And even, reading about you and your coaches being like, nobody was going to outwork Brian. Like there's some talent level in there, but everybody talks about you was the work ethic what got you there. That you just refused to let people beat you, and your determination and your ability to handle high volume, high workout, understanding the importance of every step, following the directions. It's sort of that difference between being like really good and great. And it seemed like you sort of made that decision of like, I'm going to be great. And whatever that takes, moving, living in bunk beds, working at a crappy running store, much like my own, like all those little sacrifices
really nice.
thank you so much. All those little sacrifices, it's like it's almost like you had this plan from when you were really young. And I guess, everything, did you sort of have this as a plan? Like,
No.
did you ever think like, when you started seeing success that this could be an inevitable outcome, or was it a take each year as it comes and just keep building?
Yeah, it wasn't until '04 when I led the trials that I even thought that there was an outside shot of making the Olympic team. In the 10K, I ran the trials in '04 in Sacramento, and I was, 18th or something. I was out of the serious contention and so forth. So no, it wasn't. But I have to give all the credit to the teammates I've had along the way. I had a great teammate in high school who pushed me every day. College, same way. We had a great group at St. Francis that were just workhorses, and it was never like a me versus them, or any guy on the team versus anybody else type of mentality. It was always working together to get better. Hansons was the exact same way. I have had so many great teammates that I owe a lot of my success to. So there's a lot of hard work personally, and you have to get out there and run the miles. But having guys push you is key too.
Sure.
And I just really enjoy the time I had in high school on a team, and college, and then pro. It was a great experience.
So, of course, leading up to the Beijing Olympics, so much of it was about the air quality and the smog. And you brought the mask that you had to wear because the air quality was so bad. I remember watching not just the marathon, but everything else, and just the sky just looked so angry out there.
Yep.
Did you adjust your training at all to kind of practice running in horrible, did you go run in smoggy rush hour traffic? Like, how did you get ready? I'll get there.
No,
how did you get ready for that?
We went to Florida. The Hansons would take us to Florida for 2 weeks, usually a week or two before the marathon, and get heat acclimated. So I think we were more concerned about the heat than the pollution. The marathon was the very last day of the Beijing Olympics, so by that time the air quality had improved quite a bit, but it was still about 85 degrees at race start, so it was rough. But no, and when we went, when the U.S. team went to Beijing, we did the opening ceremonies, and then they flew the distance runners and sprinters and so forth up to Dalian, which is a province north of Beijing. It's about an hour flight. And so we had a little training camp up there to get us out of that stuff, to try to keep us as healthy as possible. So yeah.
So you got to hang out. So you got to hang out with some of the other Olympians and such. Anybody that you were friendly with up there?
Yeah, I mean Ritzenheim was my roommate, so we roomed together, and it was kind of cool. The distance guys we had like a common area with rooms off of it, so it was Abdi and Ryan Hall and all the guys. Ian Dobson was there, nice. And a lot of. I mean, I got to hang out with them, play poker with them in the evenings and stuff. So it was awesome. Good experience. Yeah.
Nice. Do you still talk to any of those guys?
Yeah. Ritzenheim, I talk to quite often. I saw him at the. Brooks had me down at the Olympic trials in the last trials, and talked to him there, and still in contact with most of the guys I ran with.
Nice. I have to ask you, you brought your shoes. You brought your signature shoes that they actually got your name on and everything, which is pretty awesome in itself. Yeah. Do you think about sort of the technological advancements in shoes specifically? Like you ran 2:10, and you ran 62 for a half. Like, do you think about what you could do today with today's shoes with your fitness level back then? Yeah.
I mean, I'm a believer. I actually bought a pair of Brooks Hyperion Elite, and
nice.
I love them. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to tell if they're improving my 640 miles to a 632 now or not, but they do feel great. And I mean, I think that the proof is out there. I mean, just looking at the world records and just the overall shift in time in the marathon, I think they definitely help. And I think the big thing is they help with recovery too. Yeah. And it seems like my legs aren't as beat up after a tempo run or something after wearing those. So yeah, if I could go back in time and slip myself some shoes, it'd be a good thing. Because like I said, Brooks had a lot of time bonuses that I was close to, but I'm sure the shoes would have.
Well, because even when you ran 2:10, you were like 4 minutes off the world record around that point. It was like 2:05, 2:06, and now it's 2:01 and change. So there's been a huge jump, and you're like, geez, you could have been maybe 2:06 now with the your fitness level then with the technology now. Like, it's wild to think the times that you'd be running now with today's technology.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I won't sleep tonight, Steve.
I appreciate that. My one of our reps that we work with was a four flat runner when he went to Rutgers. So this was a million years ago, and he's like, I can look at it was like an age graded chart. It's like they have technological advancements in shoes. He has a shoe chart. Mm-hmm. They say I was like a 356 miler back in the day if I had today's shoes, and I'm like, I just kind of curious to see somebody of your caliber if you ever think about the differences.
It's cool. I mean, you look back, like Boston's a good example of Clarence DeMar and those guys. They were wearing like church loafers, to run the marathon. And so technology keeps evolving and getting better, and it's good for us,
I actually brought something for you.
All right. Box of chalk?
No, not the box of chalk. That was right here. I saved this. I saved this a million years ago, and Doug says you don't remember being in this, but Runner's World had this list of like the best things. Runner's World does a list: best places, best shoes, best this, and they had a list, and it was coolest runners of all time. And you made this list, which I think is pretty wild. But not only did you make the list of coolest runners of all time, you were named with Steve Prefontaine, Usain Bolt, and Bill Rogers as the 4 coolest runners of all time.
Show that to my kids now. Maybe I'll get some
I would have that on a T-shirt. I would wear that 24/7 on a T-shirt. I saved this from 2012 when I got it. Sorry, 2009 when I got it. So I saved that because Doug says you don't have it.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
Nice, thank you.
You're welcome. I think that's a pretty amazing company that you're in. And said I just think this is the coolest thing to get to have you come down here and talk to our shop. You've gotten to do some stuff that, like, as a running geek, like, stuff that you only dream about. Getting to compete at Boston at such a high level, getting to the trials. I just think it's really neat to see that you came from such, I don't want to say humble beginnings, but just like you didn't come into running very young. You came into it with other sports, with other disciplines that you've been working on, and even when you were good at running, you still did other sports as you're going into it, and just sort of shows like you get into running what you put out to it, and you built and worked and you got everything that you ever could have wanted out of running. And it's like a perfect lesson for the kids that are getting into it now that maybe not have success right away, and you don't have to be all-American when you're in high school or even college to find yourself at the top of the mountain.
So many great experiences. Great, I mean, like I said before, great teammates, great friends that I've made in the running community. Just great memories of being out on a morning run and seeing a sunrise, and a really, really nice, almost like a Bob Ross type painting. I mean, you can't beat running. So.
And does anybody have any questions for Brian that we're out here? We just want to see if anybody want to throw anything up to Brian. Theo?
Yeah, could you
Sure. Yeah. So at Hansons, we had like a slow gain in mileage. So when I first moved out there, I'd run a couple 100-mile weeks in college, and so the first year out there, I maybe ran 110, maxed out at 110, and next year 120. So it was a real gradual increase. By the time that I was training for the Olympics, I was running about 165 a week, and the Hansons prescribed this. They called it kind of like a 2-1-2 method. So we would do 2 days easy, which would be like a 14-miler and an 8-miler or something like that at 6 to 6:30 pace, something like that. And then we would do a speed workout, which would usually be on the track. It'd usually be like 6 miles of fast stuff. So it would be 20 seconds faster or so than goal marathon pace. Then we do 2 more days easy. Then we do a tempo run, and that would be more volume. That would be between like 8 and 12 miles at goal pace. So it might be a 3x3 mile or a 2x6 mile, something like that at goal pace. Then 2 more days easy, then we do a long run. So the long runs would be anywhere from 16 or so at the beginning of a segment to 22 to 24 at the end of a segment, a month out from the marathon. And the key with the long runs was starting out easy and then getting down to marathon pace the last 25 to 50% of the run. So, and then we'd start all over again, 2 easy days, and then back to the track, 2 easy days tempo, 2 easy days long run. So that's basically all it was. It was 3 months of that. Slow increase in volume, and the pace was pretty much always the same based on your goal marathon pace. Yeah.
165 a week.
Yeah.
It's a lot of miles in a week. It's a pretty absurd amount of miles to run in a week. If we can be honest.
The point is, yeah, it was a gradual build. I mean, I don't recommend anybody going out and running 165 this week. But Doug,
I'm going to ask lots of questions.
oh great.
This one is just kind of touch on this. When you're running 160 plus miles a week, how many days are you doubling, like back to back? Like
Every one except for the long run day. Yeah,
so
the long.
every day at that level.
Yep.
You're doing double runs every day.
Yep. Yeah, the Hansons had a nice setup out there where the stores were open from 11 to 8. So we would work a 10:45 to 3:15 shift or a 3:15 to 8:15 shift. So we had the ability. It wasn't like a normal 9 to 5, 8 to 5 job where you were at work all day and you come home, burn out and stuff. But
So you're up at the crack of dawn. Did you do longer runs in the morning?
yeah.
So you do your longer run of the day in the morning.
Yep.
You go to work and then you run another 10 miles or something.
Yep.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
It sounds like fun, I'm not going to lie.
I mean, having the guys there, having guys. I mean, we had the whole team in the morning, and in the afternoon you could always find a guy or two that was working the afternoon shift or the evening shift, whichever you were doing the same as, to get out and run with too. So that was key. Having company always is a good thing.
Nice. Anybody else have any other questions for Brian? Go ahead.
All the new shoe technologies, what would be your shoe rotation today? With the evolution of tempo shoes, recovery shoes, what would be your rotation for today?
So we were allowed to wear anything in the store. We would get like $1,000 stipend annually at Hansons. They would give us their product. So we had guys on the team wearing Nike at first, and Adidas. I mean, everybody had their brand. Basically, what they wore in college, they stuck with. 2004, we did well enough in the trials that Brooks came in and said, "Hey, we want to sponsor your team." So we moved exclusively to Brooks. I thought it was great. I mean, Brooks was really paying attention to real runners at the time. They were, I mean, they still are. But they were really updating their technology to make it work better. They had this old HydroFlow system that was kind of clunky back in the day, and when they first came on, we were like, I don't know about this, but they really improved their shoes. They took input from us to improve everything that they had all the way up and down their line. But I would run in the Adrenaline. I ran in the Adrenaline 4, 5, 6 iterations of that. So it was a pronation control shoe. I always put like a Beast insert, and the Beast used to come with like these gel inserts.
Yeah,
so
they're
that
still
was
nice.
That was my secret for like the easy runs. And then for the tempo and stuff like that, we would just wear like the Launch, like a lightweight trainer. And then for track workouts, we'd do the T4, T5. They're racing flat at the time. So I always liked feeling like the race was special. You always wanted to break your racing flats in and so forth, but you didn't want to wear them so much that it was just like the race was like another workout, So I always tried to walk that line so that when you slipped the racing flats on, it was like Christmas almost, like one of 5 times you wore them in the segment or something. So it was like game time, you know.
We talk about that actually. We talk about having a training shoe that's so close to your racer that it doesn't feel as special. I mean, we talk about like swinging a baseball bat with a weighted donut on it versus not. And the shoe technology now is so blurring those lines between a shoe that you could run it as a long distance shoe. You could race in it if you want it. I ran in a carbon plated trainer yesterday. That's what I was running in, and it seems weird to have a trainer with a plate in it, but that's what I had, and that's what they're billing it as. And it's like, it makes those easy runs seem really easy, but there's a part of you that's like, maybe they should feel a little bit harder on my easy days so I can feel that much faster on my fast days.
Yeah, that was kind of the point, was just wearing a little heavier shoe so that when you really felt like you were lightened up in the race.
Yeah. Nice. Anybody else have anything for me? Yeah, please.
What was like recovery like? So after running like 165 miles a week, what was that like?
Yeah, we would have like a 3-month segment going into every marathon, so we wouldn't have any off days in that entire 3 months. We'd run the marathon, and then we'd take a week completely off, and then we'd do a week of like 6 to 8 miles, and then we'd be right back into the mileage. So it was usually like 2 to 3 of those segments a year, and then we'd have some interim stuff. So if you were running, say, Boston in April and Chicago in, say, October, you might target a half marathon or something in the summer, so it would be a little lighter segment. But the marathon, it was always 3 months, all go, no breaks until after the race. So, or if you had an injury or something like that, obviously you'd take off. So, but I mean, I think that recovery days are really important for track and cross country. You obviously don't want to do that for the shorter, faster stuff, but for the marathon, that seemed to work. Was just like kind of callousing your body into the race day.
So you were 7 days a week for those whole 3-month blocks?
Yeah.
With doubling 6 days of the week?
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. There's all sorts of schools of thought. I mean, I know a lot of the BYU guys, they take a complete day off because of their religion and don't run a certain day, and they seem to be doing great too. So I think there's
different plans for different people.
Figure out what works for you.
Sure. Yeah. Jeez, that's a lot. Anybody else have anything else for Brian? Please.
So during like high school, started in the track. What was like your training? Like, what were you doing in school and out of school like to start?
Well, I mean, high school track, that was the only time I ran. I didn't really run outside of that. Wrestling, I ran a little bit, like a mile or two after practice, just to build up my stamina a little bit. But I mean, high school, I thought a 5K was like a crazy long run. Like who would run that far? And in hindsight, it's kind of funny now because we do 24-mile long runs at Hansons. But I don't think it was anything out of the ordinary. I mean, I was probably getting 25 miles a week tops in high school, taking it pretty easy. A lot of track stuff, a lot of fast stuff on the track, but nothing crazy.
Please.
I have to ask, what's your favorite food for fueling your body?
I mean, the night before, my go-to was always spaghetti and marinara sauce, like a slice of garlic bread and little salad maybe, and just tons of water. I would drink. If I didn't get up and go to the bathroom like 3 times the night before a marathon, I was freaking out that I wasn't hydrated enough. But I honestly, is it in Once a Runner? They say if the fire's hot enough, anything will burn.
Yeah.
I didn't really pay a lot of attention to my diet, and I wish in hindsight now that I would have a little more. You never know if I would have gotten a little more performance out of my legs with a better diet. But I definitely think it's important, especially now being 45, and I look at a cheeseburger and lose it. So, yeah.
The information that wasn't out there like it was now.
Yeah.
Our college coach used to take us to Hansons
Yeah.
for a buffet after our races because
Yeah.
he was like, you just burned a bunch of calories, so go and eat as much
Yeah.
fried food as you
Fill it
want.
up,
And that's like, oh, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Now in Heights, you're like, well, that was really dumb. That's
Yeah.
not really what you want after your race. But we didn't know any better, I guess.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any good questions for Brian?
Mm-hmm.
What's your motivation when you just can't go anymore?
I mean, again, I think having a team there is really important. Having guys to pick you up and keep you going. If you're battling an injury or if you're far into a fatigue cycle where you're just beat up and you're there because you've overworked and so forth, the only thing really to do is take the little time off and hit the reset button. But if it's just kind of like feeling like garbage 2 or 3 weeks into a segment, sometimes you just have to, get motivated and get out and keep going. If there's a definite reason that you're feeling the way you're feeling, whether it's an injury or a fatigue, then you definitely need to take off. But for me, it was just, I mean, I would always plan things out on my calendar, so I had, a list of every single run and every single workout that I did leading into the goal race, and just having that on the wall was really important for me. And there was an adage or a saying back in our day that was somewhere someone is training when you aren't, and when you race, he'll beat you. And that was always like I had that again next to my bed in college, so that was motivation too. Running is one of those things that, I don't know, for me, I got a lot out of what I put in, and that doesn't always happen in life. You can work your butt off at a job and you may not get anywhere. You can do your best raising your kids and they might still think you're a turd. Case in point. Not me. Yeah, running is one of those things that, I don't know, it's pretty awesome to be able to put the work in and see your times, get better. And they might not always, but, you can always hit the reset button and come back and try again. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I loved it because when I played football in high school, I was like a decent wide receiver, and I would be benched almost every Saturday evening, and the coach was driving a brand new Dodge Stealth at the time, and he was playing the local Dodge dealer's son. And in every game, he would start, and he'd drop a few passes, and then I'd get thrown in there every now and then, and it just kind of taught me that the running. There's no one else. You control your own destiny. It's not like the coach isn't going to bench you, or the coach isn't going to put in who he wants to have in there. It's all on you. The times don't lie. If you're faster than this kid, then you're in the top 5. You're on the team. So I like that about it a lot.
That is one of the beauty things of running. It is, and you can do it as long as you want to do it. You can't always play pickup basketball with a bunch of guys, but you can lace up your shoes tomorrow and go run if you wanted to. Whether you're with somebody or not, you have the ability to compete in the sport and make yourself the best you can be by yourself and forever, and put exactly into it and get out as much as you possibly can. And like you said, it doesn't always equate that way in life. There's a lot of situations that doesn't work, but running is one of those things where you really can kind of control your destiny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, does anybody else have anything else for Brian? Yeah.
You get tired in a race. What do you think about?
I mean, the marathon, it's pretty inevitable. Even on my best marathons at 18, 20 miles, your legs just kind of feel like rocks. They're not turning over. They feel like they're turning over fast, but you're not, never really going super fast. I would always try to train to the point where, if I was tired, if I was struggling going up a hill, I knew the guy next to me was struggling just as much, and I had to just kick it up another notch, and he would fall off. He would fall behind. So I always tried to train going into races to know that where my limits were, and if I had a guy right next to me, you have to know that he's hurting too. He's not just skipping up the hill and feeling great, or he would be 200 meters ahead. And make that decision before you even start the race, that if you get into that situation, you're going to just kick it up a notch and move ahead in the race. That was what motivated me, trying to stay up there in college.
Sounds like you do a lot of visualization.
Yeah. I mean, we would always go out. The coaches. I mean, St. Francis and Hansons. We would always go out and preview courses, and we knew them front to back, and all the turns and stuff. There was never a chance we were going to make a wrong turn. So that was, there is some mental homework to do with running. I mean, a lot of people think it's just going out there and running as hard as you can, but you can really get an advantage if you know the terrain and your strengths and weaknesses, and where you're going to hurt and where you're going to feel good.
Yeah, it's the little things that you do, the push-ups that Doug alluded to, the course, the visual, all those things kind of go into it, not just showing up race day and hoping for the best. That there's a plan way in advance.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, does anybody else have anything for Brian? I am so flattered you came down here. This was really exciting, and I know my staff and everybody was super excited. Like it's pretty amazing, and being able to watch from afar and everything, and seeing your progress and such, it inspired Doug, it inspired me, and it really, you think about the things that you're able to do of just setting your mind and working your butt off, and it inspired our whole group of friends were inspired by you, and I hope you
Thanks.
It was pretty awesome.
It was
pretty amazing, and
it was a fun 10 years, that's for sure.
Well, Brian was kind enough also, he brought some of his memorabilia stuff up here, from Runner's World to his Olympic stuff and to his custom shoes, so feel free to come up here, take a peek at his stuff, and if you were late in here, we're going to raffle off some shoes here in a minute, so if I didn't get you the raffle ticket, I'm going to pop around and do that real quick.
I brought some Brooks spike bags and lanyards and
if you guys
stickers
didn't get a
and
spike
stuff
bag,
too.
please
Yeah,
come grab
help
one.
yourself. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We'll give Brian a quick round of applause.